October 1956, Caldwell, Texas. A saloon on the main street, oil lamps, the smell of sawdust and old whiskey. At the corner table, a large man in a worn canvas jacket has been nursing the same drink for an hour. He is between pictures, driving south, taking the long roads. He has no reason to be in Caldwell and no reason to stay. At the bar, a woman in a plain dress is working the evening crowd with the quiet efficiency of someone who has learned to read a room before anything happens in it. She has just read the room. 3 men came through the door 2 minutes ago. They have not ordered anything. They are looking at her. The man at the corner table is looking at them. He has been looking at them since they walked in. Nobody has said a word yet. Here is the story. Rose Callahan is 34 years old. She came to Texas from County Clare in 1946, the year she married Tom Callahan, who had come back from the Pacific with a Bronze Star and the stillness of a man who has seen enough and is ready to build something quiet. They took 40 acres south of Caldwell. Tom drilled the well himself in the summer heat, 12 hours a day, until the water came. He built the house in 1947 and the barn in the fall. He built both of them to last, because he was the kind of man who did not see the point of building something twice. Their son Patrick was born in 1948, their daughter Nora in 1950. Tom coached Little League on Saturdays and fixed his neighbors' fences without being asked, and paid his debts before they were due. He was the kind of man a town builds itself around without knowing it until he is gone. In spring 1953, Tom borrowed $2,000 from Cal Rourke to drill a second well. The first had gone shallow in the drought. Rourke ran the largest cattle operation in Brazos County and had been lending money to smaller operators for years at terms that looked reasonable until the second year. Tom understood the terms. He planned to pay it back in 2 harvests. The first harvest was thin. The second never came. In September 1953, Tom Callahan was found dead on the county road 3 miles from his property. His horse had come home without him. The county coroner ruled it an accident. The coroner played cards with Cal Rourke on Friday nights. 3 men in Caldwell knew what happened on that road. None of them said anything. One of them was in the saloon tonight. He was standing near the door with his arms crossed and his hat pulled low. And when the large man at the corner table looked at him for the first time, something crossed his face that had nothing to do with debt collection. The week after Tom died, Rose did not sleep. She lay in the house Tom had built and listened to the walls he had put up and felt the particular silence of a place that has been emptied of the person who gave it its sound. Patrick was 5 years old and kept asking when his father was coming back. Nora was 3 and did not ask anything because she did not yet have the words, which was in some ways worse. Rose answered Patrick as honestly as she could for a 5-year-old, and then went outside and stood by the barn Tom had built and put her hand on the wall for a while. Then she came back inside and made breakfast because breakfast was what the morning required. She did not leave. She had 2 children and 40 acres and a debt that had grown to $3,100 with 2 years of interest, and she was not leaving. She took the saloon job in October 1953 because it paid cash on Friday, and cash on Friday kept the farm alive. She had been working this bar for 3 years. Patrick was 8 now, Nora was 6. They were home with a neighbor tonight the way they were every Friday. Still with us? Hit hype. It tells us this story found the right people. Cal Rourke had not come himself tonight. He was 61 years old and had been running Brazos County from behind desks for 20 years and understood that a man of his standing did not walk into saloons to threaten widows. He sent 3 men instead, Decker, Pole, and a younger one the town called Skins. Their message was simple. The debt was due in 30 days. If Rose did not pay, the farm went to Rourke. Decker moved to the bar. He stood close enough that Rose could not step back without stepping into Pole behind her. Skins stayed near the door with his arms crossed and his hat pulled low. Decker said, "Mr. Rourke wants an answer by the 1st of November. He said it quietly, the way you say something you expect to only need to say once." Rose set a glass on the bar. She did not look away from Decker. She said, "Mr. Rourke will get his answer when I have one to give." Decker looked around the room. The other patrons were suddenly very interested in their drinks. The saloon owner at the far end of the bar was looking at the floor with the expression of a man who has decided not to know what is happening. Then Decker looked at the corner table. The large man had set his glass down. He had not stood up. He had not reached for anything. He sat with both hands flat on the table, looking at the three men with the expression of a man who has been watching something develop and has decided it is developed enough. He was not someone Caldwell had seen before. He was large in a way that had nothing to do with size and everything to do with how he occupied space, without effort, without announcement, the way a fact occupies a room. Decker looked at him. The recognition arrived slowly, and then all at once. The man reached to his side, slowly, deliberately, without breaking eye contact with Decker. He took his revolver from its holster. He set it on the table in front of him, not pointing it, not raising it, just placing it flat on the wood the way you place a glass you are done with. His hand went back flat beside it. The lamp above the table threw a warm circle of light across the gun, and the hand, and the table, and not much else. He said one word, "Leave." And I am telling you, this actually happened. The saloon was very quiet. The oil lamp above the corner table made the only sound in the room, a small, steady hiss. Pole looked at Decker. Skins at the door had not moved, but something about how he was standing had changed. He was no longer looking at Rose. He was looking at the corner table with an expression that had nothing to do with the debt and everything to do with something older. Decker looked at the revolver on the table. He looked at the man's face, calm, unhurried, the face of someone who has already finished the sentence he is in the middle of. He made the calculation that men in his profession make, the one that weighs what they are being paid against what a specific moment is worth, and the calculation came out clear. He tipped his hat to Rose, a strange gesture. He made it anyway. Then he walked to the door. On his way out, he looked once more at the corner table, not at the man, at the table itself, with the specific expression of someone who has just understood that a particular evening has cost more than money. Then he went out. Pole followed. Skin stepped aside, and all three went out onto the Caldwell street, and the door swung shut behind them. The saloon went back to its business the way saloons do, slowly, carefully, one glass at a time. Rose stood at the bar with her hands on the wood in front of her. She looked at the corner table. The man was putting his revolver back in its holster with the same unhurried movement he had used to set it down. He picked up his glass. He looked at her once, a single brief look that carried a complete sentence, and then he looked back at his drink. Rose went back to work. She understood, without being told, that he had not wanted her to come to his table. If this story has you, hit the hype button. We read every single one. Where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments. I want to see how far this story reaches. The man left at 10. He left $1 on the table for a 30-cent drink. He walked out without looking back. When Rose cleared the table, she found the $1 and the glass and one other thing, a small folded piece of paper that had fallen from the man's jacket when he stood. She opened it. It was a rancher's note, a name and an address in Cody, Wyoming, with the words Bellows, Sheridan, Best Hats in the West written below in someone else's hand. She folded it again and put it in her apron pocket, and never threw it away, though she could never say exactly why. He drove to the boarding house on the north end of Caldwell and slept 4 hours. At 6 in the morning, he was driving east on the county road toward the Rourke ranch. The ranch sat behind a long gate with the Rourke brand on it, and more cattle than most men see in a lifetime grazing in the pale October morning. Cal Rourke received him in his office, a large room with a mahogany desk and a window looking out over everything Rourke had spent 20 years accumulating. Rourke was 61, with the careful stillness of a man who has learned that power operates best in silence. He recognized his visitor the moment the door opened. He poured 2 glasses of bourbon and set one on the desk and waited. The man sat across from him. He did not touch the bourbon. He said, "Rose Callahan's debt. What is the number today?" Rourke said, "That is a private financial matter between my office and Mrs. Callahan." The man said, "Give me the number." Rourke looked at him for a moment. He said, $3,100, even. The man reached into his jacket and placed $3,100 on the desk. He said, "Receipt, paid in full, today, before I leave this room." Rourke looked at the money. He looked at the man. He said, "You have no stake in this woman's situation." The man said, "I was in Caldwell last night." He paused. "I will be somewhere else tomorrow. But I was in Caldwell last night, and so were your men." He looked at Rourke steadily. "A man my size in a town this size gets noticed. People talk about what they see him near. You have been running a quiet operation for 20 years. I understand that." Rourke was quiet for a moment. He looked at the window and the cattle in the morning light. Then he said, almost to himself, "Tom Callahan was a stubborn man." He said it the way a man says something he did not intend to say out loud. The man across from him said nothing. He simply looked at Rourke and waited. Rourke looked at the money on the desk. He picked up his pen. He wrote the receipt. Rose Callahan, 40 acres, debt discharged, paid in full, October 1956. He signed it. He pushed it across the desk without looking up. The man picked it up. He stood. He said, "Tom Callahan built something worth keeping." He paused at the door. His wife knows how to keep it. He drove south out of Caldwell before 7. He had a picture starting in 3 weeks. You cannot make a man like that up. Rose Callahan received a letter from Rourke's attorney 3 days later. Debt discharged, paid in full, no further obligation, no explanation. She opened it at the kitchen table while Patrick and Nora were eating breakfast. She read it once. She read it again. She set it on the table between her coffee cup and Patrick's plate of eggs and looked at it for a long moment, while her children ate without knowing what the paper meant. Patrick looked up. He said, "What is it, Mom?" Rose folded the letter. She said, "Good news." She put it in the drawer with Tom's letters and the farm deed. It was only later, clearing the table, that she noticed the date on the attorney's letterhead, November 3rd, Tom's birthday. She stood at the sink for a long time after that, looking at nothing in particular. She never found out who paid it. The town had an idea within a week, but Rose never confirmed it and never tried to. Some things, she decided, were meant to stay the way they were. She still had the folded piece of paper from the corner table in her apron drawer. She never knew what bellows meant or why someone in Wyoming would write it down. She kept it anyway. That is the part that gets me every time. We put everything into these stories. The hype button is how you tell us to keep going. Rose farmed the 40 acres until 1979. She drilled a third well in 1961. Patrick helped dig the trench, 18 years old, his father's hands on the same tools. The water came in clean and deep the way Tom had always said it would. Patrick took over the place in 1979. He married a woman from Waco in 1972. They have 3 children. The Callahan farm is still working land. Nora became a school teacher. She taught in Caldwell for 30 years and retired in 1998. She has her father's eyes and her mother's way of not spending them on things that are not worth it. Tom Callahan's death was never officially ruled anything other than an accident. The 3 men who knew what happened on that county road in September 1953 are all dead now. What they knew went with them. In the kitchen of the Callahan farmhouse, in the drawer beside the window that looks south over the 40 acres, there is a folder. Inside it, the farm deed, Tom's discharge papers from the Pacific dated 1946, and the attorney's letter from November 1956. November 3rd, Tom's birthday. Debt discharged, paid in full. There is no name on the letter to explain who paid it. There never was. And beside the folder, folded soft from years of being unfolded and read, a small piece of paper with a name and an address in Cody, Wyoming, and 4 words in a stranger's hand. Best hats in the West. The morning light comes through that kitchen window every day and lies across the drawer where it sits closed. It stays for a while, then it moves on. If this story reached you, do me a favor. Pass it on. Share it with someone who did the right thing without asking for credit. There are more stories coming.